Hey y'all, this is Sydney Emmy, and today I'm going to be doing another requested video from a friend. This bind-off I have seen called multiple different names, but the ones that I use the most often are single needle tubular bind-off or single needle Kitchener stitch. I originally learned this variation, or a variation of this from a sock knitting class where the teacher did not like Kitchenering from two separate needles because from what I remember, she had lost her place and lost a lot of stitches from dogs and toddlers running around that she looked up a different method. That method is the one that she taught, but is not the one that I use now, because I found it more finicky than Kitchenering off two needles up until sometime last year. Even though I knew a single needle Kitchener bind-off, I still split my stitches when I was doing a tubular bind-off because it was simpler in my head. That was until I found a video explaining a different way of doing a single needle Kitchener bind-off. However, my friend could not follow that video and asked me if I could do one myself. So today I'm hopefully going to help her and maybe a few others figure out how to do this. So first thing you need to do is figure out how much yarn you need to wind off the ball so that you can do the bind off. I have heard so many different ways of calculating, measuring, just many different ways of just figuring out how much yarn you need to use. That it's kind of confusing. For socks, whether it's the toe or the cuff, I generally go around a piece, not my hand. I find if I use my hand, I end up with very little yarn at the end. If I go around the piece, I generally have enough to wind in. So I go around the piece 3 times unless I'm working with like worsted weight yarn or yarn that I just feel is thicker. Then I go around 4 times. For cowls and hats, I tend to lean towards 4.5 times, which is what I have here. Unless the yarn is quite thick, and then I would go for 5, maybe 5.5 times, depending on how I feel. Blankets, you go back and forth with measuring those instead of around. I generally lean towards 6 times just to be safe, but other people I know do 4 times, so that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But it's really just how you feel when you're doing it, and just depends on what length makes you comfortable at the end. Also, if somehow you notice that you're running short, you can always stop, wind off some more yarn, and like just pick up with the next stitch, just starting over. You'll have more to weave in, but you won't have to rip everything out. And I've seen people do that, and it's really does not look like a fun process. All right, so once you've chosen the amount of yarn you want to wind off, you cut off and add your needle. I like to use a needle with a bent end. Hold on. I have this zoomed in really closely, so once I start you can see. But it's really hard to find where the camera is. All right, so I'm using a lace one just because I like really tiny needles. Other people like blunt needles, bigger needles. It's all, again, just on preference. And then this method, many people have a similar method that has a different number of steps. I only use 5 steps. You can't see my hand in the camera. All right, so there's 5 steps. The first step will always start on a knit row. If like on socks, I tend to start with a purl row. If you're doing that, then just move this stitch right here, if it's a purl one, to your back needle and start with the knit stitch. It'll work out the same. All right, the first step is to go into the first stitch as if to knit and take it off. Then you go into the second stitch, still on the needle, insert as if to purl and pull it all the way through, but do not pull it off. Then go into the first stitch still on the needle, which is a purl stitch, and go in as if to purl and pull it all the way off and through. Then, after snugging it up but not too tightly, you insert your needle from the back of the fabric to the front through the 2 stitches still on the needle and pull it all the way through. And the last and final step is to go in as if to knit and go all the way to the back of the work so that you're set up for the next 5 steps. All right, unlike the regular Kitchener stitch, there is no like setup round or whatever. So the way it begins is the way it ends. So first step, through as if to knit and pull off. Second step is to go into the second one as if to purl, but keep it on. Then third step is to go in as if to purl and pull off that stitch and pull all the way through. Back to front is the fourth step, all the way through. As if to knit into the second stitch still on the needle and go all the way to the back so you're set up for the next one. And let's keep going. All right, when you get to the end, if you only have 2 or 3 left, what you do is you take them and you move them over, and then you get the right leg of however many stitches you need. So I need 2 more. So pulling it up a little bit, trying not to stretch them, and then put them back on the needles, and then do the last 1, 2, 3, 4, and then when you go through this one, you can pull them all the way off since the others were already bound off. All right, that actually looks really nice. All right, so to close the gap, because there's a no connector thing right there, what you do is, as I was taught, you kind of get the right and left legs like that, and then go to the back and move my needle out of the way and kind of go through, oopsie, you can't see, kind of go through these 2 so it rolls down the back, because this is supposed to be rolling over, and it kind of connects everything, and then you just weave in your ends on the back, and that closes it and makes everything look really nice. Alright, so this isn't the tidiest of closures, but really it's the best I've seen for tubular bind-off closure and making them look kind of seamless. I usually put a little tag over it, but you know, I mean, it doesn't look really all that different, so most people probably will find that nice. But I love this bind-off. For some reason, my bind-off at the top is a lot stretchier than the one on the bottom. And by that I mean just it's a lot more loosey-goosey up here than it was on my bottom ribbing. I'm not sure why. Maybe I was just, I don't know. Maybe I was just looser up here. Not a clue why. But yeah, so this has been a tubular 1 needle bind-off, or a 1 needle Kitchener stitch. I really like how it works out, and it's not as floppy as some of the other stretchy bind-offs. I mean, I know there are some areas on this one that I was not sloppy, but are floppy, and that's mainly because those were ones I was videoing. And when it's not really close in the and I have to make it so that the camera can see it, I can't really tell the tension very well. But otherwise, it turns out really nicely, and I really like this bind-off. I hope this helped, and I hope you were able to see it. And to my friend, yeah, I don't really know what to say. You kind of forced me into doing this. But this has been Cindy Emmy with a 1 needle Kitchener bind-off, 1 needle tubular bind-off. I hope you have a wonderful week, and God bless.